Okay, this is a demonstration of how easy it is to switch a Alpha XM2 to a Multilink Blackhawk power supply. The first thing you do is remove all of the connections from the Alpha, starting with the status monitoring, because, well, that's the least impactful on customer operations. Remove the temperature probe, then the batteries. After turning off the battery breaker, remove the output. You should have already switched over to the auxiliary output of your PIM before doing this operation if you are trying to keep customers up, or if you're during service window, it doesn't really matter. Remove the power. Once all the connections are disconnected, remove the power supply. The Blackhawk will pretty much hook up. All of the main connections are identical between the Blackhawk and the XM2. The only major differences are for the battery balancer and individual battery sense wires. All the rest of the components may just be plugged directly into the Blackhawk without having to change any connections. As you see, we are putting the power supply in, installing the power cord back to the power supply. First thing you do is reconnect the output power. You can then switch back the PIM, install the batteries. Don't turn the breaker back on. Reconnect the status monitoring. Reconnect the battery temperature cable, and pretty much you're back up and running. Now comes the fun part: removing all of the wire harnesses for the battery sense. This is a 3 battery system, so there are 4 sense wires for each of the 2 different systems. The battery sense wires that go to the transponder, as well as the battery sense wires for the battery balancer. Of course, on a 4 battery system you would have more than just the 4 sense wires here. You'd have 5, or if you have an 8 battery system or 6 battery system, etc., etc. After all the connections have been, all the screw terminals have been removed, you need to carefully remove all of the sense wires to make sure that you don't accidentally cross any, short out any batteries, of course. First, I'm removing carefully removing the battery balancer sense wires. And then we're carefully removing the sense wires for the transponder battery monitor. After all of the harnesses have been removed, we're going to need to get out the new harnesses. First, we're going to install the transponder battery sense wires. That's the Multilink battery balancer cable. And there's the transponder sense wires. We're going to install both the sense wires at the same time. Making sure, of course, to have the correct wires to the correct spots depending on whether it's a 3 or 4 battery system. And we're almost finished here with actually installing the battery sense wires on the battery system. Just hand tightening them down now and then going back with a tool later to make sure everything is tightened properly. Once all of your connections are tightened here, it is possible to turn on the battery breaker on the system and completely have the system back up and running before addressing these battery balancer and battery sense wires. There we are, just redressing the battery sense wires and battery balancer sense wires so that they're not interfering with anything else. Reinstalling the Multilink battery balancer, placing it on the shelf, and then threading the sense wires through, and installing it to the transponder. Sliding the battery tray back in, making sure the wires are somewhat well dressed. After such, and as a final step here, turning on the battery breaker, and we are finished. It takes about somewhere around 10 minutes to complete, and about 2 to 3 minutes to actually physically swap out the actual power supplies from the point where you turn off the plant connection to the plant to where you plug it back in.